What's poppin', people? Welcome back to Football Therapy with me, your host, Jan. I hope you're doing well, mate. Genuinely do hope that. Welcome back to Chelsea News, of course, the daily series here on this channel of Football Therapy, where I see what's being said about Chelsea, aggregating the content, telling you what's happening, and then giving my opinion for whatever that's worth. But as always, more importantly, asking for yours. Chelsea to do another transfer with a striker. No, not the one you're thinking, David Fofana, off to a Premier League team. Also, Miguel Delaney has written an article on The Independent about Chelsea. Pochettino transfers young underperforming players. The holistic, negative experience of Chelsea Football Club, which I'm really interested in getting into, and hopefully you are too. So strap yourselves in, get comfortable. If you want to support the content, you are most welcome to. All you gotta do is like and subscribe, should you choose to subscribe. Hit the bell, then you'll get notified, and as always, I'd urge you to comment as you go. Right then, let's get into it. First of all, Chelsea have recalled David Fofana, the Ivorian centre forward from Union Berlin, and it looks like we're going to send him out on loan to Burnley. That's right, Burnley. From one relegation fight to another in terms of Sevilla and Burnley, it looked like he was going to go over to the Spanish league to play for Sevilla, but seemingly now, he's off to Burnley. Now, how do we feel about that? Burnley are almost certainly going to get relegated, so it's sending him, I think, onto a sinking ship. I'd feel more comfortable sending him to Luton Town at the moment. David Fofana is an interesting one. He was a peculiar signing last January. Of course, we signed him from Mulder. He was utilised a little bit by Chelsea's manager at the time, Graham Potter, but not much. I think he scored a goal or two. A very strange signing. Matt Law spoke about this on the London is Blue podcast. It is peculiar because he's not like a 16-year-old, one of these wonder kids for the future. He's in his 20s. Was he ever going to play for Chelsea in a world where they spent £32 million on Nico Jackson? They highly rate Armand de Bruyne, is what we're constantly being told. You know, and Nkunku can play up top. And of course, Chelsea are looking to buy a new centre-forward eventually. Even if it's not in this January transfer window, it will be in the summer. Where does that leave David Fofana? He cost like 18 million quid. It wasn't nothing. Was this just an opportunity Chelsea saw and thought, let's get him, let's buy him? Much like Malang Sarr, remember we got him on a free and never used him. Maybe it's something similar. I don't know. We all got terribly excited because he loves Chelsea. He's from the Ivory Coast. He's a Didier Drogba fan. I think when he signed, he did the Didier Drogba celebration. How can you not get excited about that as a Chelsea fan? Who cares about the reality, goals, and price tag when he does the when he does the celebration and he's from Ivory Coast? We're game. It does look like it's been a peculiar signing. Look. Let's not spend too much time on it. Comment down below, what do you think about David Fofana to Burnley? I mean, I guess he gets to stay in the Prem, we keep an eye on him. I don't know. Comment down below and let's move on. Right, we're about to dip into a relatively long read, it seems, from Miguel Delaney of The Independent, talking about Mauricio Pochettino. Of course, a big talking point at the moment. Chelsea lost to Middlesbrough when they played in the Carabao Cup semi-final. Of course, a middling championship team. Questions all over the gaff. Again, regarding Chelsea's gaffer in Mauricio Pochettino. About 50% of Chelsea fans want him out. About 50% of fans are not necessarily Pochettino fans, but maybe a little bit more apathetic to the situation, or I don't know, maybe a bit more realistic to this problem ain't going to sort itself out for a long time. You know, sacking another coach and bringing even more instability can't do us any good. Do you blame the players? Do you blame the manager? Do you blame the ownership and sporting directors? Or do you blame the whole darn gang? Well, let's jump into this article from Migs Delaney, as they call him, and find out what he's saying. Inside Chelsea's experiment and the problem holding Mauricio Pochettino back. If this January's market has seemed quiet, it's in part because there have been very active discussions behind the scenes at the biggest spenders of the last 3 windows. Chelsea are trying to figure out how they can still meet the profit and sustainability requirements and bolster their squad. They want a major striker, above all Napoli's Victor Osimhen. The purchase of 1,000 shares for £140 million isn't viewed as an indication of budget though. I was wondering about that. Pochettino has already publicly said he's been told that they don't need to sell to buy. This Chelsea hierarchy has generally attempted different methods, constantly looking at angles others haven't thought of yet. Some in football would go further though. One common description is that Chelsea are undertaking a huge experiment that's never been seen before in football. Well, that's unsettling and worrying. I wanted these new owners to bring stability and long-term planning and a vision, which I thought they did. But that description sounds like they're testing out an apocalyptic new plan and project. If so, they could be about to come across another finding. The next 4 games across all 3 competitions could well decide the entire campaign. They may also dictate Pochettino's future. Despite assurances that he's not under any threat, results can still develop a momentum of their own, which is precisely what this period threatens. On Saturday, Chelsea have one of those awkward Premier League fixtures where it's a home derby they should be expected to win, but nobody would be surprised if Fulham beat them. A good result is almost more important because there's a 10-day break. That will give everyone a lot of time to mull over what's next. That ends with the Carabao Cup semi-final second leg against Middlesbrough, where Chelsea need to overcome a 1-0 deficit in an opportunity that would feel like a travesty to squander. Yes, I think everyone has agreed if Chelsea get eliminated from the Carabao Cup semi-final from a championship team in the middle of the championship, it would be nothing short of disaster. When you're in a semi-final, you take it seriously. If it's an early round and you have a bit of an embarrassment against the championship team, who cares? No one will think about it. But when you're in a semi, you ruddy take that seriously, mate. And if you get eliminated after taking it seriously, then you've got egg on your face. Carrick has done a hugely impressive job, but it's still a championship side against a club that has the type of expenditure that usually wins Champions Leagues. It's all for the potential of a first final in this ownership's time too. There's an FA Cup tie against an Aston Villa team that have almost been the anti-Chelsea in how they've performed. It won't escape attention either that the Villa Park leadership initially wanted Pochettino before the revelatory Unai Emery. It could be another result that also represents a lesson. It's weird, isn't it? Because like when Chelsea were looking for managers, I know Unai had a good season last season, but say he never went to Aston Villa, if someone said, do you want Unai Emery at Chelsea after Villarreal? A lot of people would be like, no, dude. You know? But then again, Unai Emery, like, at Arsenal and PSG, he's underperformed. The big club is where he underperforms. Like, Villa's a big club, but it's not quite, the, you know, under the microscope as Paris Saint-Germain, Arsenal, or indeed at Chelsea. He seems to do better at, you know, Sevilla, Villarreal, Aston Villa, this sort of calibre of club. Closing the month and symbolically coming just before what many perceive is the club's main event in transfer deadline day is a trip to Liverpool that carries all sorts of risks. Who knows what Chelsea's season could look like then, let alone the first 11. Pochettino has been working to find a response to the Middlesbrough defeat in training, but this points to one of the problems. There's been a sense of frustration at how little seems to permeate and how it always feels like there's one step back. The team just hasn't evolved at any rate anyone expected, not least Pochettino himself. That is in part because so much of the squad still has to mature. This is what has been so experimental. The age profile is unlike anything we've ever seen at an elite club in the modern game. Even Ajax 1995 and of course Man United in 96, two of the most famous young teams, had a lot of senior figures. The view from around football and even within the club is that it's almost all kids and not a usual team to coach. A common stance from those who work in academy football is that as recently as 5 years ago, many of the players would still have been in the under-21 squad rather than carrying the responsibility of one of the football's most noisiest clubs. It is true, I mean even just Chelsea of old, you know, would have had many of these kids in the development squad still and not like in the Chelsea first team because we would have had senior big boys in the first team. I think it's pointless ruminating on this too much because we know the plan and often it's exciting having young players in your team, but like exclusively is a big concern. It has been more difficult to impose the manager's system because, rather than being ready to take it on, some players still need more tactical education. Further proof of that comes with how their players on the loan moves have struggled. There's even a sense from academy level that the ceiling of some of the signings isn't as high as Chelsea's many graduates. One view, for example, is that Bashir Humphreys should have been ahead of Benoit Badiashile, but the latter cost over £32 million. That I take issue with because Benoit Badiashile has had so many, despite being very, very young, so many first team appearances. Didn't he have like 180 first team appearances when we signed him? Well, of course, Bashir Humphreys wouldn't have had that. So I get the point that he's trying to make here, but I think with Badiashile it's maybe a little bit misled. It doesn't yet speak to the idea that they've just accumulated all the best young talent for a future that is coming fast. In other cases, Pochettino doesn't have the players who fit. Conor Gallagher, who the hierarchy would be open to selling for a profit and sustainability reasons, is seen as one of the few who immediately gets what the manager wants. He is almost perfect for Pochettino's idea of a 4-3-3 midfielder. Beyond that, the Argentine is still trying to work out the best balance for Moises Caicedo and Enzo Fernandez. That sounds remarkable for the two midfielders who collectively cost £221, but that was the hierarchy needlessly paying over the odds when there was at least some caution within the club about both fees. The players might rise to that kind of value in time. They aren't there now, though, as reflected by their lower wages. Yeah, of course, both of them are on relatively low wages. I would say about Enzo Fernandez. This dude was balling out in the Champions League. He'd just won the World Cup. He'd just won the best young player at the World Cup. When you pluck a player like that from their club mid-season in the January transfer window who don't want to sell him, 100 million quid kind of makes sense. You know, contextually looking at it. Now, Moises Caicedo, that's an interesting one. Had we gone to Brighton at the beginning of the transfer window and said, how much do you want? And they go, 90 million, and we go, come on, 80 million. Or like 70, they say no, and they go 80. We probably could have gone for 80, but because we mucked him around for so long, and then Liverpool bid 110 million quid on him at the end, we ended up paying that money. But that was our own faults. Had we just been, if we could go back in time, we could probably lock down Moises Caicedo for like freaking 40 million pounds less or something crazy. Going for that younger profile of player is a growing trend in football, especially as the game gets more athletic and becomes so financially stretched. Real Madrid have taken this idea on almost more than anyone else in how they've adapted to a world of state ownership. At least until now, Chelsea have taken it to new extremes. Through that, Pochettino himself has gone from one extreme to another. This is the complete opposite of a top-heavy Paris Saint-Germain squad. In exactly Pochettino's last season at Parc des Princes, he had a series of players who came for free on huge wages. The Argentine struggled to impose his system there because the club's star system just didn't allow it. The free attackers in particular were given license to float. No manager is afforded any authority at PSG. It has meant nobody in charge has thrived at all, including Stamford Bridge predecessor Thomas Tuchel. People might soon say the same about Chelsea. A fair response to all of this is that Pochettino knew what he was taking on. Most of it was laid out in the drawn-out appointment process where the requirements were made clear. That does bring pressure on Pochettino beyond this job. It might even be a case study in how the wrong choices at the wrong time can ensure a career goes unfulfilled. The Argentine is still considered a coach the super clubs would look to, but not in the way he was in 2018. Yeah, I will say it here on the channel as well. It is really important to reiterate the fact how he hasn't been stitched up, Pochettino. Like, maybe the job is harder than he thought, and maybe it is an impossible job, but he agreed to the impossible job, probably thinking it wasn't the impossible job, but turns out it is the impossible job. So 2018, that's when Real Madrid were desperate to appoint Pochettino, while Manchester United retained a long-term interest. Pochettino decided to stay at Tottenham Hotspur out of the trust and some emotion, even though he was already consciously trying to solve a deepening staleness. The 18-19 Champions League final may have offered some vindication of that, but he ultimately fell victim to the staleness a few months later. There's an argument then that Pochettino repeated the same mistake twice. He waited too long and then took the wrong jobs because they happened to be big jobs. Except, it's still early in this one. If the above is a gloomy analysis, it's only a prospective situation that brings pressure. Pochettino can work against it. For all the consternation within the club about pace of results, there is an awareness that it is much better at this point than last year under Graham Potter. Really? Chelsea's analytics are promising. Passages of certain games have looked good. The belief is that some higher level finishing of the type such a club should have would suddenly make Pochettino's work look far much better. They have barely had Christopher Nkunku after all, and they want another forward. Pochettino similarly has more influence on transfers after meeting with the hierarchy back in September after a chaotic window. There's almost an irony though. That comes as Chelsea are restricted in the market for the first time under this ownership. that has brought more focus on key figures too. Todd Boehly hasn't been as visible, which is saying something for someone who turned up at the Golden Globes with a new haircut. It's all been much quieter on the market, and it's a subdued Chelsea. The next few weeks may bring a lot of noise, either way. Yeah, it is tough. And to go into the analytics briefly, I listened to, was it Duncan Alexander on the Totally Football show. I know some boys from Tifo Football also talk about this. Chelsea stats in many metrics remain very strong. I think we've created the 4th highest XG in the league this season in the Premier League, more than the likes of Manchester City and Arsenal, etc. Chelsea, wait for this one, have created the 2nd most big chances in the Premier League this season. I think only just behind Liverpool. Wow! I mean, I know we miss sitters all the time, but I didn't know we missed that many. Point being, the chances of being creative, we've just got no instinctive killer finishes. That article I think was really good from Miguel Delaney, talking about, the naivety, the immaturity, and I guess if the chances are getting created, you need maturity and self-belief to finish those chances. In terms of fitting players into the right places as well, that's a tough one. Look, Moises Caicedo and Enzo Fernandez looked like players with different skill sets that are very young, that are very talented, that you could build a midfield long term. Is that the right decision? Maybe long term it is, but maybe another manager has to do it and not Pochettino. We'll have to see. Of course, he's not going to get sacked, certainly this season. Unless Miguel Delaney's right of we lose all these recent games, the players stop playing for him, and the Chelsea fans start rebelling and maybe protesting. Then you can imagine he'll get sacked. But for the moment, it won't solve much, because there's no one else to come in and do a job and pick up this mess. At least he knows the players. He's nice to the staff. He's nice to the management above him. He's nice to the players. You can get through the season without complete implosion and being rotten to the core, because Chelsea isn't rotten to the core. There is a togetherness. It's just a dysfunctional football team at the moment, which could get better. Again, my position remains the same. I don't think Pochettino has ever been the man for Chelsea long term, but I think he could still be the man for whatever this is, provided something starts to click. Anyway, let me know what you think. Let me know what you think of Delaney's article down in the comment section below. Let's start up the conversation. Also, let me know what you think about David Datro Fofana to Burnley. That's an interesting one indeed. Yes, thank you for joining me. If you want to support the content, as always, like and subscribe. Daily videos, of course. Who knows? Maybe another one out today. If you're lucky, keep it locked, turn the bell on. I'll see you soon, hopefully. Peace.